hopefully they make it in the storm.
But drawing things back though to the Pablo Bevi's discussion, and almost this is a duo that might have maybe recognized the amount of pressure from the expectations that so many people had. You know, you see how well they perform when contested at that secluded. Currently, we struggling, and we're at the halfway point of our day. Again, they're a team that has ample experience, so I'm certain that they can overcome the mental obstacles that are included with it, but it would hurt for sure to find yourself in that sort of position. So I'm definitely interested to see just how well they manage to fight back, because again, how many times have we seen teams be in a similar position to them on the leaderboards, and then 1 or 2 good games, and all of a sudden you're back to being top 10.
Yeah, want to see that pop off happen. Hopefully it does for the team. Want to see the back-to-back for Ali as well. Him and Frizzy must be happy after that last game. Lucy gets Vortex back as well. Mid-game things happening inside the mid-game, reboots, rotations, yada yada. It's nicer to see a bunch of teams actually being inside the zone for once comparatively to last week. So many people taking their good old time getting into the circle. You can when slips are in tow and you have a lot of them to play with, but I think everyone's realizing now when the zone goes towards brutal, and it has been in EU a lot inside these finals and majors lobbies, you have to be on top of things. You just have to move when the zone moves and locates exactly where it is. You can't take your time and go for these delayed fights. Rifts are always an option, but even then we saw some people just being way too late to play their part of the game. Dapco Paco must be happy this time because not going down to Surge early and actually have the zone next to their home for this game.
The other tough thing too about some of those later rotations is that north side of the map. I mean, remember, it's the north side of the map. There's so much natural map elevation for teams that are close, whether it's off their drops or just earlier rotations to make sure that they are in a good positioning. It can be really difficult when you have teams working with that natural elevation, just doing exactly what we see Yapko and Paco doing right now. I mean, they're utilizing a little bit of height here to just take pot shots at anyone that they spot trying to run around closer towards the zone. As Refs and Trip reminded that the Mammoth pistols will always exist in these lobbies. Definitely not happy about having to expend some of his heals there for sure, but it's what you have to do. You've got to make sure that you are healthy enough on these rotations, because you never know when a 3-2-1 Mammoth pistol from a duo is going to be the end for you.
No chance for that to happen now, though, as there is no duo to face. It's just Pablo. I've been really going for this, but I just talked about how this might not be the best decision looking at how those zones are going, and this is very, very typical to what is happening with us running Tripper in the final chance. They want to make sure that this is a speedy fight. I know they're ahead on Surge, but losing position is not going to be the best in this next zone. I know it's just zone 4-2, but these mistakes and decisions will compound way later into the game. All the way we found a 1v1 though against Refscar. Tripper lost in the sauce right now, and Refscar taking a lot of damage. 3 slurps and round 2 now starts for Pablo in this intense fight in waves, and unfortunately on the backside another team comes through against Tripper.
You would think that there wouldn't be that many teams still linked Storm, but no, it's going to be another solo. No, not a solo. Astral playing a little bit further up. But still, the fact that Astral and Lazen were nearly able to cut off Trip and Revscar there, they might have possibly even extended Pablo's life here for the time being, because it does not seem as though Trip and Revs really want to stick around for much longer. So Pablo, we saw him with 3 legendary slurp juices. That might just be enough for him to continue clutching out just 1 placement higher in this game.
I see how long he can actually hold on for. Also talked about just, you know, how the game is going for people who are actually prioritizing the zone, what you kind of have to do inside of these winter circles, these snowy circles, and Firebro Curb, who are just bent on playing position as much as possible, are going for the biggest wraparound all the way towards labs. Not looking too lonely though, as a few other teams are also trying for the same type of strategy. Some people actually reaching way towards the zone to maybe even block off a few, but the zone can only really pull up more. It's the most dangerous thing you can do. Firebro and Curb staying way ahead of it. Might not have slurps or like the greatest super utility, but a flopper as well as a medkit should just heal anything that's happening from taking this big damage coming in from the zone.
Last thing I want to see though is those builds on the mountainside, and Curb instantly reminded of what it is exactly that he's trying to rotate. It's not going to be feasible to look for a dead side approach here with so many teams already positioned on this mountain.
Yeah, it's actually fine if these guys weren't like so bad on Surge, but the fact that they have to elect for the option to shoot some of these builds and come in from the zone dead side is the toughest thing. They have the game right in front of them. They can now just pull all the way north and then go left, and it's a perfect Firebro Curb experience. The issue is just earlier in this game, they did not land enough shots. Even just one mammoth pistol in someone's head costs them game kits available. Yeah, there's so much here, but this is just into his box and then just disconnects, and he gets a free 300 damage. Yeah, you'll see Propsy already running away. They're going and electing to go that north side. Demon Blessed, Nyan, everyone that's on that left is going to be stuck. Not going to be able to make that rotation. I want to follow Propsy after this to kind of just steal the essence of Firebro and Curb and just get the game going. They'll keep pushing as north as possible before cutting left, and it's looking good for the moment, but he can't build and move at the same time and heal. You can choose two, and if you only do two, then you're down to 0 and none. Unfortunate for the team that had everything set up right in front of them.
Just having to go for that reboot that I think was on their game 3 capabilities. Just so difficult to actually bounce back from those reboots, but a good attempt. At least about a little bit more time, and again, now you're just banking that some of those other teams higher up on the leaderboards don't necessarily have the greatest of games either, but one team looking for a repeat experience, if not a victory altogether. The Deal and Mr. Savage, they've got on the edge of this mountainside. They know that they're basically situated on that secondary height layer for the time being, but you're going to see those teams to the mountain now being forced to drop as that zone closes in just a little bit further, pulling away from the mountain, but still enough on the side of it to play spoiler if these teams aren't careful.
Gonna be tricky, and now they have to move towards that right side. That's all fire. This is usually where they end up tripping and falling if they do. But if they stick together and everything goes fine, end game should be so good for these guys. Very good at traversing some of these tricky zones, but here we go already. Toughness from all sides, stuck in the same box. Nice extension on towards the right from Hellfire to buy them a little bit of room. Have that slurp, can't that damage maybe one more time before then they're in trouble, and they don't have slurps to actually take over towards endgame. They still need that utility. They're not built different totally like that, where it's just them and their bodies needing that slurp to go for a height taker and make it through some of these tricky zones.
But just like Moneymaker pointed out, one thing that they definitely have going for them is that earlier mid-game aggression and the elimination put them in a good spot as far as their surge damage is concerned, so they can at least choose to maneuver with a little bit more time, a little bit more poise, essentially. Not necessarily as forced to rush things through. And Tripper and Revsguard, they make it happen with the rift in.
This has been a pattern.
Great spot.
Yeah, on EU over and over again. People just rifting in, barely even moving. Everyone's so focused when it's a winter zone on what's happening in front of their box that no one can even focus or fathom there's people flying in from the sky. So nice for Tripper and Revsguard. Meanwhile, in the trenches, Clement, Kaizen move in and just make it into the zone. They're praying for that little bit bounce back towards the bottom side. They'll have one of the best spots in the game for that if it's possible. But if EU is anything, it's not merciful when it comes to these zones. If it bounces back towards that north side, if it stretches and goes max, this is going to be tough. We'll find out in 2 seconds right here as everyone's shooting back and forth. Lots of room for Clement and Kaizen to work with. It just goes a little bit towards the right. So now everyone's going to be shoved in, having to move up mountains right now, starting from molehills.
Could be really problematic for teams like Yapko and Paco that were hanging out a little bit deeper north. Now they have to make one of the furthest rotations in comparison to some of these other teams that got a relatively lucky pool. But again, how lucky are you really with so much congestion having built up on this bottom side of the zone? Lucia Demon hoping that they can be blessed with somebody running into their box, because if there's one thing they could definitely utilize right now, it's a little bit of a refresh for those materials. Builds running relatively low for some of these teams here in the mid-ground congestion.
The Savage will have to move, make use of the builds that they have too. Looking to be fine for the moment. Up on Surge 2, another good game for Vidal Savage. Is always awesome to see. Clement and Kaizen are going to be the ones kind of stretching their game a little bit thin. 8 zone, just 500 materials remaining. It's going to be tough to make it up mountains and then still play your own game. But they're striving for it, reaching towards stars right now. Hopefully they land on the moon. Hopefully they land on some ice, and they have made it now. Trickiest thing would be for the zone to just keep going forward. That
dobra,
kind of follow back down. On the right side though, Shotgun's going to be on their walls. Clement taking a little bit of damage, but not too much that he can't handle.
And that's the other thing too, with Howley and Nefrizi currently controlling the high ground. Howley, decent amount of ammo in that flapjack, but maybe not as much as he would like in terms of how efficiently he's going to be able to suppress some of these duos. You can see him being a little bit more conservative with which direction he's actually going to choose to spray. Recognizes there's some teams trying to ramp all the way down. He's going to force duo to essentially drop entirely. Still good on builds. Clement, Kaizen, different story. Now relatively low on builds, but they got the natural terrain to work with, and it's going to be a way outside rotate all the way down ultimate low ground here for Clement. He's just going to slide complete bottom. Knows that when he's running low, this low on builds, you got to start trying to duke it out in the low ground.
It's going to be tough. These guys are basically just clocked out now. I mean, Nebs and Hellfire in front of them, not going to be able to get through those walls easily. Meanwhile, on height, this is going to be very, very tricky to actually navigate through. You have to be giving up a few layers, but being good at the same time. Focusing back on Clement, though. Moving in, really going for an all-in here. Once again, full defense. Might not even find too much, but spraying right through the builds. There's one, can hopefully find the next two. It is good for Clement and Kaizen. That's Vexy down. A big pickup. Yo-Yo gone as well. Clement moving now. Kaizen low, might have just left him behind. Tripper by himself too, as Rush guards the cost to get to this position. No builds left, and that zone will keep moving up and up hills.
Tripper just doing what he can to crawl around on the low ground. Medmis, though, practically out at this point. It's all or nothing at this point. He's trying to run into the zone, but he just doesn't have the time and the zone.
Look at it. That is insane. Going up one of the biggest mountains in the game. Clement somehow from low is making it possible. Nebs has expended everything to get to this spot. And now he just has his bullets, and he goes for the second player running outside of the box. After that, sees that everyone in front of him has 7 seconds to find some type of elim. Lots of damage. No siphon, though. Zone moving slowly so he can actually catch up on the right side. But everyone still has to move up. He has no builds left and no time. He's gone. Paco now also one of the people who was leading these tarps is going to be absolutely flabbergasted as well. More people coming in from the bottom side. This is one of the most brutal zones we've ever seen in FortNite, and now it's forcing everyone back down the hill. Howley, who had height, not to this point now, down in the slums of the snow, and he can't do much either. A few more builds gotten. Nefrizi's somewhere, but he's not next to him, and more people dropping in this box. Howley is also down. Now it's just Nefrizi, and he has no mess. There's no builds left inside this endgame.
And that's the problem, is that the team that's on height is just having an absolute field day, non-stop spraying down onto everyone below. It's FortNite, it's Moneymaker just playing devastators to the entirety of this lobby as if they didn't have enough to worry about. Marine gonna try to get a piece of the action instead. He'll wind up falling here. It's Propsy Hero doing what he can to try and recover some sort of footing, but the legendary Slurp Juice, the Medmis, they're only gonna buy so much time. Moneymaker will wind up dropping here, doesn't have any builds, knows that he can just play the aggressor here, trying to hunt out these players that are left standing, but it's a solo situation up against the likes of FortNite and Moneymaker. And the zone just one more time, Shio, keeps being as brutal as ever with the way that it's pulling over height. And that's all it takes. FortNite, Moneymaker, they don't need to find that last solo. They just needed the zones.
That is just nuts from FortNite and Moneymaker. Big props to them to navigate all of that, stay on height. Called it out in game 1. When these guys live and are together, they can do absolutely great things, and they took so much to get to this spot too. You cannot ignore the fact that these guys look perfect in one of the hardest zones we've ever seen, in the biggest stakes we've seen inside EU this year in general. Everyone else too trying their best to make it up. So many elims